Hello and welcome back to the Sideboard. I'm Ruben Bressler and I'm here with Michael Caffrey, a name you might recognize for, well, you're going to recognize it from this deck because this deck is fairly absurd. So I guess this probably starting with Nick Fit. Nick Fit's a deck that has been fairly popular across the pond, as they say, in Europe, and centers around Veteran Explorer. This deck sort of takes it to a whole new level, and by a whole new level, what I mean, of course, is someone was like, well, Nick Fit's good, but so's Brainstorm, so we'll put them in a deck together. Tell us a little bit about the deck.
Alright, so basically the deck is just a hybrid of playing the Black-Green Veteran Explorer shell alongside Brainstorm and some other cantrips. The cantrip engine smooths out the deck a lot. With Nick Fit, you can open up a hand of like Heroic Primal Hunter, Grave Titan, and 4 other cards you just can't cast and only usually play in EDH. Here we have a lot more cards that allow us to interact with our opponents.
So perhaps the most important card, of course, is Veteran Explorer, which when it dies, it allows you to search your library, each player to search their library for 2 basic lands. It was part of a cycle from Weatherlight, actually, that allowed both players to do things. It also included Noble Benefactor and some other stupid cards.
Swords is the main drawback of Veteran Explorer. If you run out an early Veteran Explorer and you just snap a Swords on it, then you have no value at all. Here you're almost guaranteed to get your 2 lands.
Now, something very important about Veteran Explorer, of course, is several of the decks in the format don't have basic lands. Now, of course, Merfolk does, but Rug Delver doesn't. Maverick has very few. The combo decks almost run none, maybe 1 or 2. So Veteran Explorer can often just get nothing out of your opponent while you get 2 free mana ramps.
Even the decks that tend to play a lot of lands, something like Maverick, which will have 4 or 5 basic lands, their lands aren't relevant.
Right.
On turn 3, when they have 3 lands, they're already casting the Knight of the Reliquaries. They already have all the mana they need. Those basics are just going to sit on the board and not really do anything for them at all. Whereas my basics are letting me cast very important spells.
Right, and those very important spells are at the top of your chain. One of the more interesting cards in your deck is this Fierce Empath, from a common from Scourge, which you can get with your Green Sun Zenith. That lets you search out some of the more enormous cards out of your deck, such as Consecrated Sphinx, Hornet Queen, and Grave Titan, cards that, as you so eloquently put, are usually just in EDH.
Right. Fierce Empath is a way of tutoring for any of the cards. It lets you bridge from the Green Sun Zenith tutors into a larger threat. There's 3 different threats of Grave Titan, Hornet Queen, and Consecrated Sphinx, generally depending on the board state. Hornet Queen is good against anyone that plays creatures because it puts 5 Death Touchers on the board.
A lot like Maverick. What other decks is
Maverick or Rug. A lot of the random decks in the format, like the Metalworker deck, anything that tries to win by attacking, it lets you play a card that stabilizes the board.
Whereas Consecrated Sphinx is better against the more controlling decks?
Right, Consecrated Sphinx is better against decks that can't remove it, something like a Storm combo or a deck of that nature. Whereas Grave Titan's the all-around role player. It puts a lot of guys on the board. Even if they have a removal spell, you still have 2 2/2s, and it's going to be very difficult to deal with, like the Hymn to Torok bug decks from a while back, which aren't seeing as much play, or something like Rug, although Hornet Queen's also really good against Rug.
Now, I don't want to point out every card in the deck, because I could actually talk about every card in this deck, but most importantly, I think, Baleful Strix. Let's talk a minute about the cards from Plane Chase 2012. It's a 1/1 Death Touch flying creature that draws a card. It's seen some play, but not a ton of play. Talk to me a little bit about Baleful Strix.
Baleful Strix does 3 main things in the deck. First off, it's just a cheap creature and early drop, which will help the deck get into the late game. Second, it'll sacrifice to Cabal Therapy for the decks where you need more interaction. And third, it's blue, so it pitches to the Force of Wills in the sideboard.
Ah, yes. Flawless segue, actually, so let's move on to the sideboard. So in the sideboard you have Force of Wills, which I imagine are mostly for the combo matchups. Nile Spellbombs, just as your generic Grave Hate, and you can use them because you're playing black, the most underplayed color in the format. And more Thoughtseize for other combo decks, control decks?
It's the combo decks and Merfolk, actually.
Oh, okay.
Merfolk, you just need to disrupt them a little bit earlier on in the game, taking their 2-drop or 3-drop off the curve, which will allow time for Pernicious Deed to take over the game.
Right. So you have 4 Pernicious Deeds main, which is maybe my favorite card ever printed.
It's fantastic.
I don't understand why it doesn't see more play. Talk to me about why Pernicious Deed is so good.
Everyone in this format right now is playing creatures. So, Rug Delver has 1-drop and 2-drop creatures. Maverick has a bunch of small creatures. And Pernicious Deed is the way of stabilizing against those decks. I just played Maverick last round. He had a board of Noble Hierarch, Umezawa's Jitte, and Sylvan Library. I hit the 5th land, Pernicious Deed, blow for 2. I just 5-for-1'd him and won the game because of it.
Well, this deck looks like a ton of fun. Michael Caffrey, thank you for joining me in the sideboard. And if you want to learn more about this deck, we have the deck posted below, and build it for yourself and have some fun.